without realizing it, accepted this prison as if it were freedom. Everything that distracted us, divided us, and kept us too comfortable to question was part of this grand deception. I saw people fighting over politics, identity, status, unaware that they were being led exactly where this system wanted them, divided, controllable. Technology, which many saw as progress, had a hidden side, a means of keeping us trapped in a constant state of dependency and distraction. The implanted devices were the ultimate symbol of this submission, a voluntary acceptance of something that distanced us from our true essence. And the most frightening part? People seemed happy about it. There was no revolt, no resistance. It was as if an entire world was willingly accepting its own enslavement, unaware of the invisible chains binding them. I felt a tightness in my chest, an indescribable anguish. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone to wake up, but my voice wouldn't come out. Jesus looked at me with compassion, but also with deep sadness. He knew that even if this truth were revealed, few would be willing to accept it. Then he showed me the two paths. One was wide, illuminated, full of promises of comfort and security. I saw crowds walking down it without hesitation, smiling, distracted, completely unaware of the final destination. The other path was narrow, steep, difficult to tread. There were few walking it, but those few had something in their eyes that the others didn't: clarity. They knew they were going against the flow, that they were choosing a harder path, but they also knew it was the only one that would lead them to true freedom. My heart tightened even more when I realized that I myself had never stopped to think about this before. I had spent my entire life believing I was just living, unaware that in many ways I too was part of this system without questioning. It was then that Jesus turned to me and, without needing words, made me understand why I was there. I hadn't died, at least not completely. My time on earth wasn't over yet. There was something I needed to do, something I needed to tell. But how? How to explain something like this to a world that doesn't want to listen? The idea of returning frightened me more than the experience of death itself. I knew that, upon opening my eyes again, nothing would ever be the same. People would laugh, doubt, call me crazy. What if I started doubting myself over time? What if all of this was just an illusion of my dying mind? How could I be sure that this was real? Jesus didn't answer me. He just looked at me with a mix of love and firmness. I knew I had no choice. I had to go back. Suddenly, I was pulled back with a force that made me feel as if I were being torn from a place where I already belonged. The light disappeared, the peace disappeared, and in its place came pain. Unbearable, crushing pain. I felt my body again, heavy, broken. My head throbbed, my lungs burned as I tried to breathe. I heard voices, people talking to me, calling my name. It took a few seconds for me to understand where I was. A hospital. The sound of machines beeping, the strong smell of disinfectant, the harsh brightness of fluorescent lights. I was alive. I had returned. But why? For what? Tears streamed down my face without me realizing it. I wanted to scream, to tell everything I had seen, but no one there would understand. How could I put into words something so immense, so real yet impossible to explain? In the days that followed, my recovery was considered almost miraculous by the doctors. Despite the severity of the accident, I had no permanent injuries. My broken bones were healing quickly, and my consciousness was intact. But inside, something was different. It was as if I no longer fully belonged to this world. The things that used to worry me, bills, work, news, seemed irrelevant now. All the time, the vision Jesus had shown me returned to my mind. I looked at the people around me and saw in them the same stupor I had seen in that other plane. They were trapped, living on autopilot, without even realizing that something greater was happening, and it terrified me. How could I tell what I'd experienced without sounding insane? How to warn people about something they didn't even know existed? The truth was overwhelming. Most didn't want to know. I tried to tell a few close people. My brother was the first. He listened attentively but then laughed, saying I must have dreamed it, or that the medication was messing with my head. A friend from church said what I saw was just a post-traumatic delusion. Even the most religious seemed uncomfortable with what I was saying. No one wanted to hear that they were being deceived, that the comfort and normality of life were, in fact, part of an invisible prison. And then I understood. Jesus already knew this. He knew most wouldn't believe, but he sent me back anyway. It wasn't about convincing the masses. It was about finding those few who were ready to see, and it was at that moment that I made my decision. Even if no one believed me, I would speak. Because now, after what I had seen, I could never live pretending nothing had happened. Since then, my life has been a constant struggle between what I know and what the world insists on ignoring. I returned to my job, tried to resume my routine, but nothing seemed the same. I look at screens, at the news, at people immersed in their distractions, and all I see is the dark mist Jesus showed me. I try to talk about it when I feel someone is ready to listen, but most of the time, I'm met with blank stares or discomfort. The strangest thing of all is that sometimes I feel like I'm being watched, as if somehow what was revealed to me had left a mark on me. Maybe it's paranoia, maybe it's real, I don't know. All I know is that after what I experienced, there's no going back to who I was before. I don't expect everyone to believe me. I know many will dismiss this as a hallucination, an effect of trauma, a passing delusion. But to those who feel deep down that something is wrong with the world, I say, you're not crazy. There's something keeping us trapped, something that makes us accept this reality without questioning. I saw it with my own eyes, and I also saw that there's a way out of this illusion, but it's hard. It requires sacrifice. It requires courage. Few choose it, but it exists. I don't know how long I'll still be here, or if I'll ever have all the answers. But one thing I'm sure of, Jesus showed me the truth, and I'll never be the same again. In the months that followed, I began to realize that my experience hadn't ended in the hospital. I thought everything Jesus wanted to show me had already been revealed, but the truth was that the changes within me were just beginning. My dreams became different. They weren't just memories of the accident or of being in that other plane. They were visions. Sometimes I saw people I knew enveloped in that same dark mist, as if they were trapped and didn't even know it. Other times, I saw symbols, places I'd never been, but that seemed important. The worst was the feeling. Whenever I woke from these dreams, I felt a weight in my chest, as if something were trying to pull me back to that dimension, as if the line between the two worlds had become thinner for me now. I began to wonder, why me? Why did Jesus choose to show me all this? I was never someone special. I never had visions before. I was never more religious than anyone else. But now I saw things in a way I couldn't ignore. Everything around me seemed like part of a grand theater. The news, technological advancements, speeches about freedom and progress. It all sounded different now, as if there was something hidden between the lines. And when I tried to warn people, what I saw in their eyes was exactly what I had seen in that vision. A stupor, an unconscious resistance to anything that threatened their normality. It was terrifying. How do you fight something people don't want to see? The loneliness began to weigh on me. I found myself surrounded by people, but at the same time, completely isolated. My co-workers noticed I was different. I no longer laughed at the same things. I couldn't chat about trivialities like before. Even the elderly I cared for noticed. Some of them, curiously, seemed to understand better than the younger ones. A lady named Margaret, 89 years old, held my hand one day and said, "You saw something, didn't you? I see it in your eyes." I was shocked. I didn't expect anyone to notice. I just nodded, unable to say anything. She just smiled and whispered, "You're not alone." That sent chills down my spine. Had other people gone through something like this and just stayed silent? I began to search for similar accounts. I spent hours reading near-death experience testimonies online, trying to find something that connected with what I had seen. Some stories spoke of light, love, reunions with loved ones, but very few mentioned what Jesus had shown me, the illusion we live in, the invisible manipulation. This made me feel even more out of place. Was I the only one who had seen this side of things? Was I misinterpreting it? But then I found a small, almost hidden forum where a few people talked about similar visions. They too had seen shadows enveloping the world. They too had sensed that something greater was happening, but that most people simply didn't want to see. My heart raced. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. From that moment on, my life took a new direction. I began talking with some of these people on the forum, sharing experiences, trying to understand what connected us. Some of them had gone through NDEs, others had spontaneous visions or strange experiences that made them question reality. But they all agreed on one thing: the world wasn't what it seemed. It was through these conversations that I began to notice patterns. People who had visions like mine reported changes in their perception of reality. Some said certain places gave them a feeling of oppression, as if something invisible were draining their energy. Others claimed they began to notice small glitches in daily life, too many coincidences, strange patterns, as if something were trying to keep the illusion intact. And I knew exactly what they meant. Then something really strange happened. One night, as I tried to sleep, I felt a presence in my room. It wasn't like before, when I felt Jesus by my side. It was something different. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the air itself had become denser. My instincts screamed that something wasn't right. I closed my eyes and tried to pray, but at that moment I heard a loud buzzing in my ears, as if my own mind were being invaded by a deafening noise. My body became paralyzed, and for a moment I thought I was dying again. But then, with all the strength I could muster, I mentally called out the name of Jesus. And like a snap, everything stopped. The air became light again. The buzzing disappeared. I opened my eyes, gasping, and knew in that instant that this battle wasn't just spiritual, it was real, and I was in the middle of it. After that night, my view of the world changed completely. I knew I could no longer ignore what was happening. If that presence I felt tried to silence me, it meant that what I knew was real. And if it was real, then I had to continue. I began to speak more openly, even knowing it would push some people away. At work, I noticed some colleagues looked at me strangely when I mentioned my experience. My own family began to avoid me, as if they feared I was going mad. But to my surprise, some people began to approach me. They were few, but they listened. Some of them confided that they had felt something similar, a discomfort they couldn't explain, a sense that something was wrong with the world, but they had never been able to put it into words. And that's when I realized this truth wasn't just mine. It was scattered, waiting to be discovered by those who were ready to see. But the more I spoke, the more I felt something was trying to stop me. Small things began to happen. My phone would turn off in the middle of important conversations. Files I saved would disappear out of nowhere. I had recurring nightmares, always with the same feeling of oppression and voices whispering in the background. trying to convince me to forget all of this. But I couldn't. I didn't want to. I knew this resistance only meant I was on the right path. That's when I decided to share my experience with as many people as possible. If most didn't want to listen, so be it. But if even one soul awakened because of me, then all the suffering would have been worth it. Deep down, I know my life will never be the same again. What I saw and experienced changed me in an irreversible way. There are days when I feel strong, convinced of the mission I've been given. But there are also days when I feel exhausted, alone, carrying a burden too heavy to bear. I can't deny that sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I had never come back. Would it have been easier to remain in that light, in that peace, away from this world that seems blind and indifferent? But then I remember Jesus' gaze, the urgency in his voice, and I know I can't give up. He brought me back for a reason, and even if I don't understand everything, I must continue. I know many will doubt me. I know some will laugh, call it a delusion, a fantasy, or simply ignore it. But I also know that someone, somewhere, will read this and feel something, a shiver, a discomfort, a spark of recognition. And to that person, I say, trust your intuition. Don't accept everything you're told as absolute truth. Question, observe, seek. There's more happening around us than we can imagine. Time is passing and choices need to be made. I've already made mine. And you?